that play golf know that there's this opportunity that we have if you're playing with friends, especially friends, or in a league. It happened to me mostly in the league I played in up at Arnold when we were up there, that whenever you were playing in that league or playing with friends, you always had a mulligan. And you could only have one mulligan per round. In other words, you needed to make sure you were only going to use it at the right time. Now, for those of you that don't play golf and may not have heard that term before, a mulligan was a do-over. You know, it could be that you're getting up there just right, and you address the ball, and you swing as hard as you can to get the longest drive you can, and it dribbles about 2 foot in front of the tee. Okay? That's when you say, mulligan, put it back up on the tee, and you get a second chance. You get a second chance to do it right that second time. Now, for life, it'd be nice if we had some mulligans in life. And sometimes we do have an opportunity to call mulligan and use our mulligan in life. If it hasn't hurt or harmed anybody and we have an opportunity to ask for forgiveness and start over again, we can ask for a mulligan in our lives with someone else. And if they feel that they can grant it to us, then we can have that new start, that idea that we can have something special and that we can do it over again and maybe get it right this time. Now we know that even in that effort, when we try and do it right, even the second and third time, it doesn't always work. We need God to say to us, it's okay. I'm going to allow you to start over again. And that's where Isaiah was. In this particular passage of Isaiah in the 62nd chapter, God is saying to the Israelites, you have a mulligan. I'm going to let you start over again. Now, let me go back a little bit and give you a little bit of history. Israel always was doing the wrong thing. They would get rescued by God, and God would tell them that you are my chosen people, and it wouldn't take very long before they were off chasing things that they weren't supposed to. They were serving and worshiping other gods. They were doing things that were not normal, that were not acceptable in God's eyes. So God would punish them. He punished them sometimes severely in that they were conquered by outside sources, outside countries, and were taken into captivity and were taken into exile and taken away from their homes. Imagine, if you will, sitting in your home one day and all of a sudden soldiers would come knocking on the door and say, hey, I'm transporting you to Kansas and you're going to live there. Or even further away, I'm going to transport you to Florida. A bunch of hands go up. Okay, I'll go. Especially in the middle of winter. No, but it's the idea of God saying, you've disobeyed me. You've done wrong. And this is your punishment. And the people of Israel are saying, oh Lord, give us another chance. Give us a do-over. Give us a mulligan. And for a while God did that. Until it just got so bad that he decided the only way people are going to learn is if they get defeated enough, they get put into exile so they can start over. So in the chapters leading up to chapter 62 in Isaiah lays out exactly what they did wrong, how they got to the position they were in. But then it's in chapter 62 that we begin to hear words of renewal. Words that excited the people of Israel, and if we read them even today, a little bit of excitement for us, that God is willing to give us a chance to start over, to do something different and new, to be different to the community. So that's what we find out as Israel tries to do these things, tries to right the wrongs that were done there by their leaders. Isaiah calls them to come into obedience and to follow God and to obey God's rules again. God's glory is this theme all the way through Isaiah, and especially in the 60th chapter. We get the prophet reminding the people of God's power and how he can make things different and change things in the lives of people. That they can do good news, that they can tell people about how great the God is that they serve, and that we can do that. The reader begins to understand that God is in a different position now, and he is willing and ready to let his people start all over again. They've been in exile for 50-some years, and it's time for them to come back home. and to begin to do what God had called them to do in the first place. And that's to tell the good news of God's kingdom. Finally, in chapter 62, Isaiah lifts up this incredible image of love that God has for the people. Righteousness shines like the dawn, and her salvation blazes like a burning torch. You see, God wanted the people to follow Him. He wanted the people to understand who He was in their lives, that they would want that kind of life each and every day. That they're going to receive a brand new name. That they're going to be allowed to start all over again. That it's going to be a sign that God says, it's okay. I love you the same. All I want you to do is follow me. The Scripture goes on to tell us that process swings all the way back to the other side. He says, the forsaken city and the desolate land will no longer be your name. Your new name will be the city of God's delight and the bride of God, for the Lord delights in you and will claim you as His bride. Now, for any of you that try to have your lawn as pristine and as beautiful as it can possibly know, the aggravation there is when your neighbors don't have the same thought. Okay? When you can build the best lawn that you could possibly build, and you put all the chemicals on it and all the things you're going to do. In fact, even as some do, there's a gentleman down here on E Street, E Avenue, that I drive by every once in a while, that's down in his grass with one of those dandelion diggers, digging every dandelion out of his lawn. I respect him for that. Someday I want to stop by and show him a sprayer and tell him this is a much easier way of getting that done. But we have that, but we also know that if the person next to us or the lot next to us is not taking care of those things, it's a futile effort. The harder you try, the more that you do it, the worse it looks. That's what was happening to the people of Israel. I mean, they understood what God wanted them to do, but their neighbors, they had it good. They had all the good things in life, and they wanted those things, and they thought the only way they could get those things is if they did the same and worshiped the same God that they did. So they wandered away. No one was caring for them, or they thought. It spread. The demands of the citizens influenced the leaders, and the leaders influenced the citizens, and the clergy were caught up in the middle of it, and they couldn't get the people to change. He couldn't get them to see the light. We need to understand that God is in the world all the way around us. He is a part of the way that we can't be separated from Him. That God is so much a part of our lives, or wants to be so much a part of our lives, that we can't live a life without Him. If we look around us, we know and understand. Just look at the person next to you. Do you see that smile on their face? That was God created. So we need to understand that that's part of who we are, and we need to recognize it. I mean, God promises us a brand new day and a glorious day every time that we wake up, if only we will answer and call Him. Sometimes we wake up in that darkness. Sometimes we find ways in which it just looks like the world is absolutely against us. And when we wake up in that midnight hour and it's so dark outside that we stumble over everything because we can't see it, then we wonder where our God is. When God is really still there, we just have not opened our eyes to it. And that personal darkness sometimes doesn't need to be that midnight darkness. It could be that darkness that falls upon our soul because something has happened in our life that has caused us to say, is life worth living? Can I keep going? Can I keep living? You see, the promise that God gives to us that was read to you this morning that He gave to the Israelites is the same one He gives to us. He says, stay faithful to me and I will bring you light. I will bring you up out of this dismal area you think you're in. And I will restore you. Be faithful. And that will bring us closer to God, and when we're closer to God, we will see the light. Now, this past week, when I was gathered together with the other clergy of the conferences, both the Kansas and Nebraska conferences, I learned about an idea that's starting to sweep around the church called the Great Awakening, of understanding that there's a change